If she plays, I'll adopt her. The millionaire laughed until the music silenced him. What happens when New York's most ruthless businessman meets a 7-year-old girl who plays a cardboard piano? Better than a conservatory graduate? A story about how one concert can change 2 lives forever and why. Family sometimes finds us where we least expect it. Before we begin, write in the comments what part of the world you're watching from today. When 32-year-old Alexander Reed first saw a girl with a cardboard piano, he thought it was another beggar's trick. It was December 2025. A snowstorm was raging across Manhattan, and he was rushing to an investor meeting that could bring his company another $500 million in revenue. The girl sat on the steps of the Steinway Academy of Music, sheltered from the wind by an old coat, clearly not in the mood. Sighs. In front of her lay a sheet of cardboard with black and white keys drawn on it, a homemade piano. Her slender fingers moved over the keys with such precision and grace as if she were playing a real concert grand. "Excuse me," Alexander said, stopping. "What are you doing?" The girl looked up. She was about 7 years old, with dark hair and surprisingly serious brown eyes. "I'm playing Chopin's First Ballade, G minor, Opus 33. Alexander blinked. He expected to hear anything but the exact title of one of the most difficult works in classical music. "I don't have a real piano on the cardboard," the girl replied simply. "But music lives not in the instrument, but here." She placed her hand over her heart. Reed felt irritated. He hated sentimentality, especially from children, who, in his opinion, used it to beg for money. "How do you know Chopin?" he asked mockingly. "My mother told me." She said Frederick wrote this ballad after the uprising in Poland. "The music is full of pain and hope at the same time." "Your mother?" "She's gone," the girl said quietly, "but she taught me a lot." Alexander glanced at his expensive watch. The meeting was in 20 minutes. But something about this child made him linger. "What's your name?" "Sofia." "And yours?" "Alexander Reed." "Reed." The girl frowned. "What about Reed Enterprises? Mom said it was a very big company." "Yes, it's my company." "Did your mother understand business?" "She understood many things, knew 5 languages, played the piano and the violin, and worked as a translator until she got sick." Sofia spoke without self-pity, simply stating the facts. This irritated Alexander even more. He couldn't stand it when children pretended to be adults. "So why are you sitting on the street and playing on cardboard now?" "I don't play for money," Sofia countered. "I practice. Someday I'll go to the conservatory and I'll become a pianist." Alexander laughed harshly, without warmth. "You think talent is everything? Without money, without connections, without the right family, you're nothing. The world is cruel, especially to dreamers." "Do you play the piano?" Sofia asked unexpectedly. "No, I don't have time for such nonsense." "Then, how do you know what talent is?" The question struck him with its directness. Alexander was used to being spoken to cautiously, obsequiously. This 7-year-old girl looked at him as an equal. "You know what?" he said impulsively. "Let's test your talent. I'll rent the hall at this academy for an hour. If you can really play this, as you said, ballad, and impress me, I'll adopt you. If not, you'll forget about music forever." Sofia looked at him carefully. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely. I have the money and influence to give you everything. An education, a home, a future. But only if you prove yourself worthy of it. And if I fail, then you'll stop dreaming of music and find something more real." Sofia stood up, brushed off her coat, and rolled up the cardboard piano. "Agreed. But I won't just play Chopin's Ballade. I'll play it so you understand. Music isn't stupidity, it's the only truth in this world." Half an hour later, Alexander was sitting in the empty concert hall of the Steinway Academy. He'd canceled a meeting with investors, allowing personal whims to interfere with his business for the first time in 10 years. Several academy professors sat next to him, attracted by the unusual request. "Mr. Reed," said an elderly woman with gray hair, "are you sure you want to put a child through this?" "Professor Martin, I'm paying for the hall. Let the girl show her what she's made of." Sofia walked onto the stage wearing her old coat, which she had never taken off. Approaching the concert grand piano, she gently stroked the lid. "Hello," she said quietly to the instrument. "My name is Sofia. May I play for you?" Alexander smiled skeptically, the theatricality he so hated. Sofia sat down at the piano, adjusted the bench, and rested her hands on the keys. For a moment, absolute silence reigned in the hall, and then the music began. The first notes of Chopin's first Ballade rang out so pure and soulful that Alexander caught his breath. Sofia didn't play like a child who'd memorized a complex piece. She played like a musician who understood every note, every pause, every emotional transition. Her technique was impeccable. Her fingers flew across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed incredible for a 7-year-old. But the important thing wasn't technique. Sofia played with such soul, with such pain and hope, that the music made the listeners forget everything else. Alexander closed his eyes and felt something in his chest tighten with pain. The music awakened memories he'd kept locked away for years. His half-sister Emma, who also dreamed of music, who also played Chopin, who died at age 10 of leukemia, never to realize her dreams. When the last note faded, a deafening silence filled the hall. The teachers stared at Sofia, their mouths open. Professor Martin wept quietly. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I've been teaching here for 30 years, and I've never heard anything like this from a child." Alexander was silent. He couldn't utter a word. Sofia slowly rose from the piano and looked at him. "Well, Mr. Reed, have I impressed you?" He nodded, not trusting his own voice. "Then welcome to my family, Uncle Alexander." "Uncle," he said, surprised. "Didn't you recognize me?" Sofia smiled through her tears. "My mother's name was Emma Morrison." "Yes, for courage, Emma Reed." "It's impossible," Alexander whispered, standing up so abruptly that the bench fell over. "Emma died 22 years ago. She couldn't have children." Sofia looked at him calmly from the concert stage. "Mom died 3 years ago. She told me about her older brother, who became very rich and very lonely. She said that you stopped talking after your parents died." Alexander's heart was pounding. He took out his phone with trembling hands and opened an old photograph, the only one he had kept from childhood. In it, he was 14 years old, hugging 10-year-old Emma in front of the hospital. Sofia walked to the edge of the stage and looked closely at the screen. Yes, it was Mom, only younger. But how, when? Alexander couldn't collect his thoughts. "I was told that she died in the hospital of leukemia. She recovered. The experimental treatment worked, but the doctors said the risk of a relapse was very high. She's tall, so her relatives shouldn't hope for anything. Why didn't she contact me?" Sofia smiled sadly. "Did you try to find her, or did you just trust the doctors and bury her in your heart?" The blow was precise and painful. After the news of Emma's death, 18-year-old Alexander truly withdrew into himself, deciding that he would never love anyone again. He threw himself into business, built an empire, but never tried to check whether his sister was really dead. She married Carlos Martinez, Sofia continued. They moved to Chicago. Mom worked as a translator at the UN. Dad was a doctor. They dreamed of a large family, but Mom had trouble having children due to chemotherapy. I was born when she was 38. "Where's your father?" "Dad died when I was 4. Heart attack. Mom raised me alone for the last 3 years." Alexander sat back down on the bench, feeling the world turn upside down. "Him. Why didn't you tell me who you were right away? Would you have believed it or thought it was another attempt to extort money?" She was right. He would definitely have thought so. "Mama said you had a very heavy heart," Sofia added, "that you stopped believing in love after her illness. That's why she never tried to find you, afraid of causing you even more pain." Professor Martin, who had been silently listening to their conversation, quietly approached Alexander. "Mr. Reed, if this really is your niece, then she has a phenomenal talent. Children like that are born once in a generation." "I know," he replied hoarsely. "Was Emma like that too? Then what are you going to do?" Alexander looked at Sofia, who was patiently awaiting his decision. There was no pleading or despair in her eyes, only a calm confidence that everything would be fine. "Sofia, where are you living now?" "With Mr. Pete. He worked as a concierge in our building when Mom was alive. After she died, he took me in." "Why didn't you contact child welfare?" "Mr. Pete was afraid I'd be given to a foster family who wouldn't understand my love of music. He's a former musician himself, played double bass in an orchestra. Everything became even stranger and more surprising. And he lets you sit outside with a cardboard piano. He works on a construction site during the day and in a restaurant at night. I decide for myself how to spend my time. Sofia. Alexander stood up and walked to the stage. If you really are my niece, then I want to take you in, give you everything. A home, an education, the best music teachers. And Mr. Pete? What? Mr. Pete, he's part of the family too. If you want to adopt me, then he must live with us. Alexander thought for a moment. He was accustomed to luxury, to the perfect order in his mansion on Upper East Side. The idea of letting an unfamiliar elderly worker into his world seemed absurd. Sofia, I don't know this man. And I don't know you, the girl answered calmly. But I'm ready to trust. Are you ready? Another precise blow. The child was teaching him a lesson. In humanity. Okay, but first I want to meet him and the documents about your mother. Of course, Mr. Pete will be glad to meet my uncle. Sofia took off her old coat, revealing a simple but clean dress. And now may I play a little more? There's such a beautiful piano here, and I've dreamed of a real instrument for so long. Alexander nodded, unable to refuse. Sofia sat down at the piano again and began to play. This time, something light and joyful. Mozart, it seemed to Alexander. The music flowed from her fingers easily and naturally, like breathing. He looked at her, and for the first time in many years felt something akin to happiness. He had a family, a real, living family. But deep down, an anxious voice told him, it can't be. That's simple. Too many coincidences, too perfect a story. And Alexander Reed wasn't used to trusting perfect stories. 2 days later, Alexander was sitting in his office on the 42nd floor of a skyscraper, studying the report of private investigator Ray Morrison, New York's best detective, whom he had hired to verify Sofia's story. Mr. Reed, Morrison said, laying out documents on the desk. You won't believe what I've found out. Be frank. Sofia is a liar. No, it's even stranger. The girl was telling the truth, but not the whole truth. Alexander tensed. Explain. Emma Reed did indeed survive and marry Carlos Martinez, but Sofia is not their biological daughter. How can this be understood? Morrison pulled out a medical certificate. Emma could not have children. Childhood chemotherapy had led to infertility. Sofia was adopted as an infant. Where from? This is where the interesting part begins. The girl's biological mother, a certain Elena Vasquez, is a 16-year-old girl from Mexico City. Her father is unknown. So is Sofia not my niece? Technically, no, but she had lived with Emma since birth and considered her her mother. After Carlos's death, they moved to New York. Alexander felt both disappointment and relief. Disappointment because he had lost his only living connection to Emma. Relief because he didn't have to change his life for someone else's child. What else? Emma worked as a translator at the UN, just as the girl had said. But for the past 2 years, she had been suffering from cancer. Secondary complications from childhood. Leukemia. The treatment was very expensive. She had no money, on the contrary. Emma left the girl a $2 million life insurance policy. But there were conditions. The money can only be received upon reaching adulthood or through adoption by relatives. Alexander frowned. Where did she get such a sum? She knew about your success, followed your career, read about your deals. In the last year of her life, she invested all her savings in your company's shares. Was she right about the stock price rise? Emma invested in my company? Yes. And in her will, she wrote that if anything happened to her, Sofia should find her uncle Alexander, the only person who could understand her love of music. Her heart sank with pain. Emma believed in him to the end, even though they hadn't spoken for 22 years. Where did the girl live after her mother's death with her guardian, Pete Johnson? He really did work as a concierge in their building. A former musician. After Emma's death, he took Sofia in to live with him so as not to send her to an orphanage. And where do they live? In Johnson's apartment on the outskirts of the Bronx. Very modest, but clean. The man works 2 jobs to support the girl, and no one is claiming her custody. Morrison's face darkened. There's one problem. Emma had a stepfather. Damian Reed, your uncle. He's disinherited, but he can technically claim custody of Emma's adopted daughter. Alexander felt a chill in his stomach. Damian Reed is the black sheep of the family, connected to organized crime, an alcoholic and a gambler. Alexander hasn't seen him in 15 years. He doesn't know about Sofia yet, but if they find out about the $2 million inheritance. He'll find a way to gain custody, Alexander finished. He's the one with connections in the courts and can bribe officials. Alexander stood and walked to the picture window. Manhattan spread out below, his empire, his world. But for the first time in years, money and power seemed insufficient to solve the problem. Morrison, I want to meet this Pete guy today. Why? I want to make sure the girl is safe. An hour later, Alexander stood in front of a shabby house in the Bronx. The building had seen better days. Chapped paint, broken windows on the lower floors, a damp smell in the hallway. On the fourth floor, he knocked on the door of apartment number 23. A tall, thin man of about 60, with gray hair and kind eyes, opened the door. Pete Johnson. Yes. And you? Alexander Reed. Sofia's uncle. The man's face lit up. Finally, Sofia had been so looking forward to meeting you. Please come in. The apartment was tiny. One room, which served as both a bedroom, living room, and dining room, but it was very clean and cozy. In the corner stood an old double bass. Photos of Sofia hung on the walls. Is Sofia at school? Alexander asked. Yes, but she'll be back soon. Please sit down. Would you like some coffee? Thank you. Pete bustled about in the tiny kitchen, and Alexander looked at the photographs. They showed his Emma, all grown up, but with the same kind eyes. And next to her, little Sofia at different ages. Mr. Johnson, why did you take in someone else's child? Pete placed a cup of coffee in front of him. Sofia is not a stranger. I knew her from birth. I saw how Emma fought her illness for her daughter. After her death, I couldn't abandon the girl. But you don't have the money to support her, but you have love, and money comes with money. The simplicity of this answer astounded Alexander. Emma left Sofia an inheritance. $2 million. Pete nodded. I know, but the money will only be available after she is adopted by relatives. Emma wanted Sofia to have a real family. And if I take her with me, I'll be happy. Sofia deserves better than an old musician can give, but she wants you to stay with us. Pete smiled. A wise girl knows that family isn't blood but love. At that moment, the key turned in the lock, and Sofia entered with a briefcase over her shoulder. Mr. Pete, I'm home, she called, then saw Alexander. Uncle, you've arrived. She threw herself into his arms with such joy, as if she'd been waiting for this all her life. Hello, Sofia, he said, embracing his niece. Maybe not blood, but the only connection he had with Emma. Are we going to live together now? Yes, if you want. I really want to. And Mr. Pete will come too. Of course, Alexander replied, looking into the old man's kind eyes. Mr. Pete will come too. A week after Sofia moved into Alexander's Upper East Side mansion, their quiet life ended. At 6:30 in the morning, Alexander was having breakfast with his niece when the doorbell rang. Mr. Reed, a man in an expensive suit, stood at the threshold with a folder of documents. My name is David Black. I am an attorney. I represent Billionaire. Alexander's blood ran cold. He knew this moment would come, but he was hoping to buy himself some time. What do you need? To submit documents regarding a custody review of the minor Sofia Martinez. On what basis? My client is the stepfather of the late Emma Reed and has legal custody of her adopted daughter. Sofia left the dining room, overhearing the conversation. Uncle, Alexander, who is this? You're nobody. Honey, go have breakfast. But the lawyer had already seen the girl. Sofia, I represent your grandfather. Damien, he really wants to meet you. I don't have a grandfather, Damien. Sofia replied coldly. My uncle is the only family I have. Sofia, your mother was married to Damien Reed's son. That makes him your grandfather legally. That's not true, the girl cried. Alexander shielded her with his body. Black, get out of my house. Here's the court order. The lawyer handed over the documents. The hearing is scheduled for next Monday. I recommend you consult a good family lawyer. When the door closed, Sofia hugged Alexander. They can't take me away from you, can they? No one will take you away, he said firmly. I promise. But after examining the documents, Alexander realized the matter was more serious than it seemed. Damien, indeed, had formal guardianship rights, and most importantly, he knew about the $2 million inheritance. That evening, while Sofia was sleeping, Alexander called New York's top family lawyer. The situation is complicated, said attorney Robert Stein. Damian Reed hasn't been deprived of parental rights. He is technically the girl's grandfather. He has a chance to win the case. Even with his criminal past, he has never been convicted. Suspicions, no evidence. And what does the law say about the child's wishes? Sofia is too young for her opinion to be decisive. The court primarily considers the formal rights of relatives. Alexander realized he couldn't win using conventional methods. He needed to find dirt on Damian. The next day, he met with Detective Morrison again. I need everything on Damian Reed. Every violation, every connection to the criminal underworld. It's dangerous. He has influential friends. I don't care. Sofia won't fall into the hands of this scumbag. But 3 days later, it became clear that Damian was also preparing for a fight. On Friday evening, while Alexander was working in his office, 3 masked men burst into the house. Where is she? One of them shouted. Alexander managed to press the alarm button on his security system, but he knew help wouldn't arrive right away. Upstairs, he shouted to Pete, who was sitting with Sofia in her room. Lock the door. The burglars rushed down the stairs. Alexander tried to stop them, but he was hit on the head and lost consciousness. He came to by the sound of sirens. Security had arrived, and the burglars had disappeared. But when he went up to Sofia's room, he found only Pete with a broken lip. Where is Sofia? They took her. The old man croaked. They said Grandpa wanted to meet her. Alexander grabbed his phone and dialed Damian's number, which he pulled from his old contacts. A familiar, slightly raspy voice called Uncle Damian. Where is she, Alexander? What meeting? We haven't seen each other for 15 years. Where is Sofia? She's safe with her grandfather. We're just getting to know each other. If you touch her, Alexander, I'm not a monster. I just want to talk to my granddaughter, to find out if you're caring for her properly. Give her back immediately. After the trial, if the judge decides you're the best guardian, I'll back off, but for now the girl will stay with me. The connection was lost. Alexander realized the police wouldn't help. Technically, Damian had contact with his granddaughter, but proving the kidnapping would be difficult. He called Morrison. I need to know where she's keeping her, and I need proof of his crimes at any cost. Alexander, this could be dangerous. For the girl. What's dangerous? Save her or leave her with a criminal psychopath. The next morning, Morrison called with information. Damian is keeping Sofia in a warehouse at the port. His underground casino is also there. I have photos of the gaming tables, documents showing unpaid taxes. This is enough for an arrest. If the information is presented correctly, then do it, and I'll go get Sofia. Alexander took Pete and drove to the port. He knew he was acting at his own risk. But the thought of Sofia getting hurt haunted him. Damian's men were waiting for them at the warehouse complex, but the police arrived with them. Morrison acted quickly. Damian, you are under arrest on charges of organizing an illegal gambling operation and tax evasion. Alexander saw Sofia. She was sitting in the corner of the warehouse, frightened but unharmed. Next to her stood Damian himself, gray-haired, plump, with cruel eyes. Uncle Alexander, Sofia called out when she saw him. Hello, nephew. Damian grinned. Good job, but it's not over yet. It's over for you, Alexander replied, hugging Sofia. But he knew Damian was right. The arrest didn't cancel the trial. The fight for Sofia was just beginning. The trial took place 3 weeks after Damian's arrest. Despite being charged with running an illegal casino, his lawyers secured bail and continued fighting for Sofia's custody. Alexander sat in the courtroom next to his lawyer, holding his niece's hand. Sofia was wearing a new dark blue dress he'd bought her especially for this day. She seemed calm, but he could feel her fingers trembling. Everything will be fine, he whispered in her ear. I know, Sofia replied. Mom always said that truth wins. Judge Margaret Wilson was a woman in her 50s with a stern face and a fair reputation. She carefully examined everything. Case documents. So, she began, we have 2 claimants for guardianship of minor Sofia Martinez. Alexander Reed claims custody as the uncle of the girl's deceased adoptive mother. Damian Reed claims custody as the stepfather of the same woman. Attorney Demianov stood up. Your Honor, my client has closer family ties to the late Emma Reed. He raised her as his own daughter after her parents' death. That's a lie. Alexander couldn't contain himself. Mr. Reed, the judge said sternly, control your emotions. Damien's lawyer continued. Furthermore, my client believes that Alexander Reed is unable to provide the girl with a normal upbringing. He is a bachelor, busy with business all day, and has no experience raising children. And my client has experience raising children, Alexander's lawyer retorted. Damien was arrested for running an underground casino and has ties to the criminal underworld. The charges have not been proven. Then let's hear from the girl herself, the judge suggested. Sofia stood and approached the judge's table. Sofia, Judge Wilson said softly. Do you understand what's going on? Yes, Your Honor. 2 people want to become my guardians. And who would you like to live with? Sofia looked at Alexander, then at Damien. With Uncle Alexander and with Mr. Pete. Why not with Grandpa? Damien? He's not my grandfather, Sofia said firmly. A grandfather is someone who loves you and cares for you. And Mr. Damien only wants my money. A commotion arose in the courtroom. The judge banged her gavel. Sofia, how do you know about the money? I heard his lawyer talking on the phone. He said that as soon as he gets guardianship, he will be able to manage my inheritance. Damien's lawyer's face turned pale. Sofia, the judge continued, what does family mean to you? The girl thought for a moment. Family is like music, Your Honor. An orchestra has many different instruments, but they play together, creating something beautiful. Uncle Alexander, Mr. Pete, and I are like an orchestra. We are different, but together we create a family. And Mr. Damien, he's like an instrument that plays out of tune. He ruins the whole music. The judge smiled. Thank you, Sofia. You may sit down. After an hour's recess, the judge announced her decision. After reviewing all the circumstances of the case, I have concluded that the interests of the minor Sofia Martinez will be best protected under the guardianship of Alexander Reed. Mr. Reed has a stable income, a good reputation, and, most importantly, a sincere desire to care for the child. Alexander felt a huge weight lift from his shoulders. However, the judge continued, I am setting a probationary period of 6 months. Social services will regularly check the girl's living conditions. Thank you, Your Honor, Alexander said. And one more condition. Sofia expressed a desire for Mr. Johnson to live with them. I think that's reasonable. The girl needs stability and a familiar environment. After the trial, the 3 of them stood on the steps of the building. Alexander, Sofia, and Pete. We won, Alexander said quietly. No, Uncle, Sofia replied. We became family. 6 months later, the probationary period ended, and Alexander officially adopted his niece. Sofia entered a prestigious music school, where her talent caused a sensation among the teachers. Pete became not only a member of the family, but also the head of security in Alexander's home. It turned out the old musician was an excellent judge of character and could recognize danger a mile away. You know, Alexander said one day, sitting on the terrace of the mansion, watching Sofia play in the garden with the neighbor's children. I thought money and power were all I needed in life. And now, he asked, Pete, sitting next to him with a cup of coffee. Now I understand. Emma was right. The most important thing in life is love. Emma was a wise woman. She knew that sooner or later you and Sofia would find each other. Do you think she had it all planned out? I'm sure she did. Emma believed in fate and in the power of music to change the world. Sofia, her last gift to you. Alexander nodded, watching his niece laugh, chasing a butterfly. For the first time in over 30 years, he was truly happy. And in the evening, Sofia sat down at the piano in the living room and played a new piece. Something bright and joyful that she had composed herself. What's the name of this melody? Alexander asked. Family, Sofia replied. I dedicate it to you and Mr. Pete for teaching me. Sometimes the best things in life can't be bought with money. And the music flowed through the house, filling it with warmth and love, something Alexander Reed had been missing all these years.